Well, hi, everyone. I don't know if you've ever asked the question, just who really is a Christian, but that's the question I'm talking about with Jeff Cranford. And we have been talking about this for several sessions now, and one of the words that we keep coming back to is intentionality.
Right.
Are you intentional about following Christ? And Jeff, you talked about how that intentionality might look a little different for somebody who just the other day decided it's time to get intentional versus somebody who's been walking that road for years. Let's maybe start with that new believer. No, let's start even before that. Let's start with someone who's maybe a month out, a couple months out, who is earnestly exploring Christ. These are people you and I really love to interact with, who they haven't really said, I'm fully ready yet, but they're asking those questions. What does that look like in a person?
It's an awesome time. I mean, you can see it's the Holy Spirit who draws men and women. When Jesus left, he told his disciples, it's better that I go away. I'm going to send the Holy Spirit, and he's going to be convicting the world. He's going to be drawing people into himself. And so that's the work that the Holy Spirit's doing that we get to be part and participant with. Now, anytime we have a conversation about who is a Christian, we always must recognize the overarching umbrella of the sovereignty of God. And Jesus' admonition and warning in the beginning of Matthew 7, which is don't judge each other. Don't be a judge lest you be judged. It's not for me to judge another person. Is he or is he not? I've got to recognize fruits of Jesus in them, but I'm not a judge to say this person, that denomination. I'm not that judge. I'm not that. I'm calling everybody to follow Jesus. That's the proclamation of the gospel. But someone just a few moments out, in God's sovereign plan, God may already see them as a child, even though they've not actually physically taken whatever steps it would be. I know that's hard to understand and grasp, but God sees the end from the beginning. And we often talk about sometimes God treats us in ways, even when we're not saved, knowing that one day we will be. And I know that brings up a whole can of worms, which we won't go into, but there's just a sense in which I think we have to be cautious not to take snapshots of anybody in the course, whether they're pre-believers, brand new believers, 5 years in, 10 years in, not take those snapshots of judgments in time and say, well, that person's not devout enough. It puts fear in the minds and the hearts of new believers. New believers can settle themselves based upon their belief and faith in Jesus, but what must be resident within that is that fundamental core intentionality in the beginning to follow. I'm coming, and that's how the gospel must be preached. It's to follow him. What that looks like in Ethiopia may be different than Calcutta, that may be different in the United States, but there is a fundamental giving up of our realm and allowing ourselves to begin to follow him in his realm, in the unseen realm. And that's going to look different along the way. It's going to look different.
I know that one of the conversations you and I have had before, and this is rather stark, is that sometimes somebody who has not said, yes, I believe, is actually more earnest in their pursuit of who Christ is and maybe what impact he would have in my life than somebody who supposedly has said, yes, I believe, and they've just kind of fallen into a rote sort of faith. That's a stark contrast, and it's certainly one that compels me to stay on the road when I see somebody who hasn't even really said, I'm absolutely sure this is what I want to do with my life, poring over the word, asking meaningful questions, and being very intentional.
Absolutely. And in the end, it gets back to, what is the heart? The Father knows the heart. And so you may catch a snapshot of a brother or a sister who's failing. And at that moment, they're not devout. Well, that's not for me to judge. That's not for me to say they are or aren't. They may be in a place, but there's still a fundamental intentionality. The Bible's very clear. A righteous man falls 7 times, but gets up every time. Yeah. So it's that getting up. So if a person finds themselves, I don't feel like devout. I don't feel even like a Christian, a hot Christian. Get up. And it's that getting up that reflects back on the intentionality to pick up the cross, whether there be a moment in time that it looks like they're not following at all.
Well, let's next time move from the pre-believer to someone who is new in the faith.
Good.
Thank you.